Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you our first look at Tier 6 Russian aircraft carrier. This is Serov. Now, yesterday's video, we talked about Komsomolets. We talked about some of the basics of where the developers seem to be going with how the Soviet carriers are designed, their large alpha strikes, their fragile planes, and all that. So I'm probably going to try not to rehash that again. If you're interested to kind of have a look at the basics of that, definitely go check out the back half of the Komsomolets video from Monday when we kind of basically explain all of that. I don't want to get too bogged down into the weeds of that again. What we're going to do here today is mostly a comparison of the ship against her other competition at Tier 6, which is what I generally try to do when I do these first look videos. So, we've got all these existing tier ships in the game, existing tier 6 ships in the game. Let's talk about where she fits in, what she compares to, that sort of thing. So, that's what we're going to be doing today. As always, guys, obviously I can't show you gameplay. We can talk through all the stats we want. But, no, they're still testing these things. I've already made one big round of tweaks. I expect we're going to see several more along the way. So let's have a look at Serov here, as she sits in the port of Kronstadt here on the video. First things first, as we always do, survivability, 39,500 HP. This is worst in tier. It's only worse in tier by 100 HP. I mean, Ryujo is literally 100 HP more than this. So she is a very fragile ship, okay? 40,000 HP, and, well, she's not all that well armored. You see there's 7% torpedo protection, also worst in tier. And the armor layout here, I'm showing you the Citadel. I'll show you the full armor package, okay? 19 mil bow, we ain't bouncing nothing. 21 millimeter deck, probably ain't bouncing much there either. Only 100 millimeters. Well, this is 75 on this side and 100. Okay, that's odd. They've got an it's like a Lexington where the armor is unbalanced, but I've got 75 millimeters here on the starboard belt and 100 millimeters on the port belt. It was pointed out to me in one of my YouTube comments from the Komsomolets video. I missed this completely. This ship is largely based on a Chapayev hull. Okay, so imagine yourself shooting at a Chapayev hull, and you know what kind of amazing citadels you ring up when you shoot at a Chapayev hull. Shooting at a Serov is going to feel the same. This ship really, really, really doesn't want to get shot at by anybody. I will say that she is better armored against destroyers than her predecessor in Komsomolets, but that's not saying a whole lot. And it's certainly not an invitation to say, hey, why don't you go brawl with people with this ship? Really, really don't. Really don't, okay? When Serov gets shot at, she's going to feel it. She's incredibly fragile. Now, is she detectable? Well, now that's where things get interesting. We're going to skip over. We'll come back to maneuverability in a minute. She is technically not that stealthy. When you rig her for a full stealth build, she's 10.7 here on the surface. That is fairly average. That basically ties her with Furious and Vesser, which are 10.8 and 10.6 respectively. So she's right in the middle of this range. She is not Ryujo, right? Ryujo, you can get down to under sub 9 kilometer detection, and that ship can move, right? Like this is crazy. I will say Serov is basically the fastest tier 8, tier 6. She is essentially the fastest tier 6 tech tree carrier. You see there 35.5 knots. Eric Lowenhart does technically beat this ship out, coming in almost at 36, a little faster than this, but Serov for the tech tree, fastest. So it's interesting, right? You're looking at a ship that is fairly incredibly fragile. I'd say standard detectability. Very, very easier to snipe with torpedoes than any other tier 6 carrier, but she's fast. She's fast enough to keep up with some of the cruisers in this tier. Now, that speed is a double-edged sword. If she's fast enough to keep up with her team, she's fast enough to get into trouble and find herself someplace that she really wishes she wasn't. So Serov is a hull that, in my mind, will reward aggressive positioning, right? But it is possible to be too aggressive. So don't be surprised if you see some of these, you see as these ships come into the game, you see some of them derping around in places like, what is he doing there? A lot of players probably don't realize they've got 35.5 knots of speed to play with, and they're going to find themselves in trouble very, very quickly. So I expect these to die lots because they're incredibly fragile once they get shot at. 880 on the turning circle radius, 9.5 on the rudder shift. These are best in tier, technically tied for best in tier for rudder shift. Actually, and I lied. Ryujo is still shorter overall length. She's still best in tier on the turning circle. But for a ship this long and skinny and everything. She handles decently, apparently, right? Like that's a good rudder shift time, and 880 on the turning circle is pretty nice. So hopefully she'll handle better than some of the fat pigs, right? Tier 6 is where you really start to get with the frustrating carriers in terms of handling things and cursing at the autopilot. So yeah, it'll be nice to see, good to kind of try this ship out and see how well she handles. A defenses. Your A defenses are your long-range defenses are built around the double-barreled 100mm turrets. These should look familiar. These are a newer version than the ones we saw on Komsomolets, but there they are. Her mid-range aura on the back of the 37mm K-mounts there, and then her short-range aura built out of these basically. They're called 12.7 mils here. They're basically 50 caliber double barrel little machine gun mounts. She's got lots of these little sprinkled all over the place. AA-wise, her long-range aura is actually pretty comparable to most other Tier 6 carriers, okay? You see, let's put her flak. She puts up four flak puffs, 1120 damage. The flak damage is a little on the light side, but the puffs is about right. Continuous damage here, you're seeing 105 in the outer ring. That's about right. 91 in the middle ring is really bad. It's really bad. It's not as bad as Lowenhart, but it's really bad. And then she makes up for some of that in the inner ring there. 231 on the backs of those 50mm mounts. So the AA is not going to discourage a carrier. To me, when I look at a Serov, what I see right away, especially with that torpedo protection and that this AA defense, is a ship that very, very real. It's a very, very real possibility this thing could get sniped, or that a fellow Tier 6 carrier can land meaningful damage against this ship. So if she's caught out, if your team is shooting at her, if your team gets some damage into her, and you can see that on your team bars or something, you go, oh, hey, I can probably finish that guy off. That's worth looking into. Something else I want to point out. This is not something that's common, but I'm going to point it out. Go back to her armor layout, okay? Her deck armor here, only 21mm. If you're used to driving a Furious, the Tier 6 British carrier with the level bombers, you're used to those bombs shattering on most things you drop them on. They will not shatter on Serov's deck. They will be full penetration bombs on Serov's deck. That will hurt. Now, Ark Royal cannot do this. Ark Royal's bombs only have 19mm of penetration, so Ark Royal can't get away with this trick, but if you're driving a Furious, which is one of my favorite Tier 6 aircraft carriers, then you absolutely can. So in my mind, Serov is a very real candidate for a very potential early carrier strike. I'm not suggesting you try that, because generally when you do, you find yourself sucking wind later in the match. You're running out of planes. But if the enemy Serov driver, not paying attention, puts himself in a bad position, as the carrier driver, you can probably contribute to that. Those 100mm mounts we look at do make up her secondary battery out to 5 kilometers. I mean, they're here. Don't get in the gunfight with this thing. You saw the armor profile. You don't want to get shot at. That'll end badly. That'll just end horribly. All right, let's talk about the aircraft. All right, so if you've seen the Komsomolets video, a lot of what I'm singing here is going to sound familiar. All right, so let's have a look at these. Starting off with the attack aircraft. We're now up to where we are putting 6 planes in the sky. Okay, you see there? 6 planes on deck, 6 planes in the attack squadron. Again, this is the standard Soviet way of doing things on their aircraft carriers. You're putting up 6 planes. That is the entire attack, right? You're going to launch a squadron. That squadron will attack once, and then they're done. Okay? So, 2,800 damage on the rockets. Pretty solid there. That makes for a huge alpha strike, by the way. A massive alpha strike. If you land all these rockets, you won't. If you land all these rockets, that alpha strike is over 65,000 damage. These things should really, really hit light cruisers like a train, right? Imagine turning and catching a Nuremberg broadside with these things. You won't Citadel him, but you will absolutely do mean things to him, because look at that penetration, 37mm, right? You're going to pin all his superstructure, some of his upper works. He's really going to feel that. And that 12% fire chance, yeah, you're going to light some fires. So to me, these, do you have the opportunity to throw these at a destroyer? Maybe, but rockets versus destroyers these days is almost a lose-lose proposition. It's almost a waste of time. I will say the fire chance also gives me a little bit of interest in trying them against a larger target, i.e. a battleship. Most rocket fire chances in this tier are in about the 5 to 7% range. Ryujo's 8%. This is 12%. you might actually be able to get reliable fires on a battleship out of these. That would be nice. You wouldn't probably get tremendous damage. Again, that 37 mils will pin his upper, works for some battleships. It will probably pin his superstructure. You'll get some decent damage, especially with this many rockets. But I think the fires are what you should really go for. So the idea of maybe coming in with the torpedo bombers and landing a flood, then immediately following up with these things, these rockets, and coming back to get a fire, very, very possible. One other thing I want to point out before we get away is the speed, 149 knots. That's pretty good. That's not best in tier. There's a 150 and a couple of 153s. That's Ranger Vesser and Lowenhart, all a little faster than this, but that's not too shabby, especially for the damage these things put out. So yeah, I like the look of the attack squadron. It's definitely not going to be the kind of thing you're going to throw against destroyers, but will definitely hurt other targets that you throw them at. Especially, imagine throwing these at the opposing aircraft carrier. That's a trick that I learned to do on Enterprise, right? Enterprise's rocket squadron could just, once upon a time, just do horrible things when she would get matched up against a Shokaku. You'd put that rocket squadron down, you could put 10, 12, 15,000 damage into a Shokaku with Enterprise's rockets. I'm speculatively believing that that Serov's rockets could do something very similar to the opposing carrier. The torpedo bombers, I love the look of these planes. Look how beefy these planes are. They're massive. They're huge. Now, from a health perspective, let's have a look here. Let me run the numbers against the competition. Oh, we didn't talk about it, but those the health on those rocket planes, worst in tier. Absolutely worst in tier, not even close. All right, so let's look at the health on the torpedo bombers. Yep, also worst in tier. Vesser is a little ahead of this, okay? These planes also incredibly slow, 108 knots. This is like Ark Royal speed. It's not quite that bad. It's about 10 knots faster than Ark Royal, but these planes are fat and slow, okay? These torpedo bombers are the kind of thing that you are not going to get many strikes on over the course of a game, simply because it's going to take them forever to get anywhere. Now, once you do get them out, you've got 6 torpedoes to put into the water. They have a 6-kilometer range, 41 knots of speed, 38-33 alpha strike, and a 33% flood chance. So let's talk about what these numbers mean. For starters, these torpedoes are the weakest torpedoes in Tier 6. They are the longest range torpedoes in Tier 6. They do tie Lowenhart for that. They have the lowest flood chance. Actually, that's not true. Lowenhart's torpedoes are worse than this. But of all the tech tree ships, they have the lowest flood chance of all the torpedoes in Tier 6. 41 knots, not too bad on speed, right? I like that. But if you can land them all, good luck. They have the overall highest alpha strike of all the torpedoes in Tier 6 because you're putting 6 of them into the water. Nobody else puts more than 3 into the water. Only Ark Royal does that. Everybody else puts 2 into the water. Those alpha strikes all between 10 to 15,000. A little lower than that if you're the Germans because their torpedoes are pretty weak. But you see here, Serov, very, very weak torpedoes, but a whole lot of them, okay? And yeah, not great on the flood chance either, only 33%. So, I think what's going to happen, I think what you're going to see with the torpedo bombers, I talked about maybe trying to land a flood, then come back with something else and light a fire. I think maybe if you're on, using these to attack a battleship, that's the kind of attack you'd take. You'd see if you can roll the dice and get somebody, land a flood, then follow up with something that's going to have a more reliable chance of landing the fire, and just see what happens. But yeah, they're slow. You're not going to be getting these planes around the map very quickly. This is the kind of plane that you're, I've always struggled to use Ark Royal's bombers. I really have. So, or certainly her torpedo bombers. So we'll see. I'm probably not the right person to ask about these. Probably not the right person to give you my opinion. But they seem pretty slow. These are going to be a challenge to use, I think. And then last but not least, let's get this one set up here. And let's have a look at the skip bombers. Let's look at the different. There we go. Coming from a different angle. All right, there we go. All right, so having a look at the skip bombers here, you're looking at 1190 HP. Again, worst in tier. 112 on the speed. Not quite worst in tier. Ark Royal and Ranger bombers are slower than this, but that's basically it. These are very, very slow planes. They are not going to move that quickly. You do put 6 of them into the air, 6 of them downrange, so you're going to put 6 bombs into the drop with 32 mils of pen, 6,100 damage, 35% fire chance. Basically the same bomb you were dropping at Tier 4, okay? Same pen, same fire, same damage. The nice thing about that is that 32 millimeters of pen, still going to be plenty of battleships and big fat targets you're going to pen with these bombs at this range. In this tier bracket, okay? Even some Tier 8 battleships that you're going to encounter, looking at you, France or Britain, will be able to get full pens out of the bombs with these things. The more I'm looking at these ships, right, the more I look at Serov's armament here, the more I see a carrier that is designed to pick on an opposing capital ship. Now, maybe that's a misunderstanding on my part, right? But as I look at the squad, like the rocket nerfs have basically made rocket planes almost completely ineffective against against destroyers. Okay, a cruiser is going to be able to probably do mean things to your squadron as it comes in, right? Let's say you take this skip bomber squadron in against a hipper, right? You're probably gonna drop, but you're probably only going to drop with maybe, depending on how the build of the hipper is built out, you're probably only going to drop 4 bombs, right? He's probably going to swat probably a couple of these planes out of the sky. Will you hit him and you hurt him? You will if you land him all the bombs. He'll feel that, right? But I think you're more reliably looking at trying to get these in against opposing capital ships, right? You look at the torpedoes with a 6-kilometer range; they're very slow. You don't want to take them in too close. You want to drop them from range and get out and try to salvage the aircraft. So, and what's better to try that against than a battleship that's hard to turn, hard to maneuver, a little slower than his counterparts in many cases. So yeah, there's things to like about these ships. They do seem designed to pick on opposing capital ships. And if you're a cruiser or a destroyer driver, you like the sound of that, right? You're tired of getting harassed by planes. Let the battleships deal with it. That's literally what they're there for. So we'll see. That's speculative on my part, guys. I haven't driven any of these ships yet. I don't have any experience, but I'm just looking over the numbers. That kind of seems to be where they're going. And if I'm honest, that's what capital ships should. That's what these ships should be doing, right? The carriers were kind of a replacement for battleships in the battle lines. They took that job over and hunted enemy capital ships, enemy carriers, enemy battleships. That's kind of what they did. So we'll see if that's where the Soviet line goes, or if maybe I'm full of crap. I'm not sure. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that first look. We'll bring you the rest of the line as the week continues. Be safe, wash your hands, and I'll catch you next time.